So let me jump into this question because I know some people probably want to know. I know you did a recent podcast
Yep.
on Card Ladder where you talked about content on YouTube or content in general in the hobby. And you referenced there's a need for more scholarly content and less cornball content. Can you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, man, I don't want to.
What you were talking about.
I ruffled some feathers when I said that, and I probably owe some people some apologies who may have thought it was aimed at them and it wasn't. Look, I like content. Here's how I'll frame it. I like content that teaches me something or that makes me think about things critically or in a way that I'd never thought about them before. And I think the hobby could use a little more of that type of content. So, and look, I'm a stakeholder in the outcome of the hobby. I work in this industry. I collect. I spend every spare dollar on cards. I lose money on cards most of the time.
Well, I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do a similar thing. Yeah.
Okay. So to me, I take our content space very seriously. And I really worry. And maybe it's a misplaced worry, or maybe it's an unfair worry. I'm totally willing to concede that if I'm wrong, but I really worry that the content that people first discover when they're thinking about getting back into cards or they're thinking about looking at cards, that it portrays our industry as a get rich quick scam.
Yeah.
And it's not that. Our industry is and the hobby is something so much better than that. Collecting cards, the reason why I stuck with it and ultimately made it into a profession was because collecting cards through the community it created, through the increased connection to professional sports that it gave me, through the way that it just made it more fun to be a fan, through just checking eBay, my eBay saved searches every day when I wake up, it made my life better. It took some of the complexities of adult life out of my mind for a little while, and it helped me focus on something that had a lot of nostalgia that I had a lot of nostalgia for. It reminded me of a simpler, better time in life. And these are good things, like to have a hobby that sort of takes you away from the stresses and the complexities of adult life and lets you escape a little bit.
Yeah.
That's what the hobby is. It's escapism, it's collecting, it's community, it's friendships, it's adventure, it's experience, it's connection to sports, it's sports fandom. And I don't see those themes being broadcasted much, if at all, on some of the biggest and the most visible content platforms that we have for sports cards. And so, hey, look, that bothered me. I spoke out about it. And, I understand that I'm being critical. And and then in turn, if people are critical of me and my point of view, I have to accept that because I'm being critical as well. So if I'm going to put myself out there and say, hey, look, I'm critical of the state of, the face of hobby content right now, then I have to be more than willing to listen and hear out people who are then going to turn around and be critical of me.
Understood.
Yep.
So I have two quick questions for you with that.
Sure.
You come across to me as a person that speaks their mind and you're not concerned about if it may hurt someone's feelings. I'm going to say what I need to say. Do you regret going on Sports Cards Anonymous and talking about this cornball content, things like that, and scholarly content? And there's no knock against Dakota. It's about at the time when it was said. And how do you feel about that?
Well, look, I mean, I wanted to make a little noise. I didn't schedule that interview. He scheduled it with me, and so I, for better or worse, I do just speak my mind. But I want to just challenge one thing though, which is that it does bother me if something I say, somebody is offended by it or it hurts their feelings. I don't want to do that. I don't want to offend people but sometimes you can't have it both ways. Sometimes if you see something going on that doesn't seem quite right and you speak out about it, maybe not everybody's going to like it. Maybe not everybody's going to agree with it. But, no, I really appreciate Dakota giving me the opportunity to expand on those comments. I really appreciate him giving Christina, my business
Yeah.
partner at Card Ladder,
Mhm.
and obviously my fiance, giving her the opportunity to speak her mind as well. Look, I think some good discussions have been had about what is the direction of hobby content, about how do we make hobby content that not only serves the collectors who are already here, who sometimes can be overlooked, but how do we make content also that is bringing in the right type of people? Because there's something to the idea that the energy that you put out and the type of thoughts and ideas that you put out is going to be reflected in the type of people that ultimately come into our audiences. And it's the unfortunate truth that there was a pretty decent number of people who came into the hobby and then left it over the last year or two who
Yeah.
didn't care about the community, who didn't care about cards, who didn't care about the longevity of our space, who didn't care about, any of the stuff that I talked about fandom, about, people just having fun and improving their life through collecting, and just having an outlet. Instead, the sports cards were seen as a get rich quick scam. It was seen as a way to pump up, high quantity commodity cards, drive the markets up to, unsustainable levels like on Luca Prism based PSA 10s.
Mhm.
And then when the market hits a crescendo, start leaking out their supply. And then you have collectors who, didn't know any better, who bought in when these markets were being artificially pumped up by some of these nefarious actors. And now here we are a year or two later, and they're holding the bag. And they didn't do anything wrong. They just heard from content creators, hey, a Luca Prism based PSA 10, that's the card you got to go get. Oh, it's at $2,000 today. It's only going up from here. You have to go buy that card. It's part of the top 5 cards that are going up. So go buy this card. Well, people listened, especially people who are new to the hobby and who just wanted to give it a shot. They listened, and now they got burned. And so now, with the benefit of hindsight, I think we have to say, what can we learn from that as content creators? That's where I'm coming
So
from.
let me ask you this question too, because I've had this conversation with several people, where people will say that viewership kind of drives what kind of content is being
Mhm.
created. If I create content that provokes thought or teaches, people really don't want to watch that. They want to watch things that, this is what people have told me. They
Yeah,
want to watch things that are more exciting,
yeah.
bigger value cards being talked about, or
Mhm.
sales or trades going on. What do you think about that?
Yeah, there's something to that. It's a fair observation. And it's part of something bigger than sports card culture. It's part of social media culture and influencer culture, that the algorithms are set up in such a way to promote content that sort of is more clickable by people who are more casually browsing. So I get it, and there's a lot of credence to that point of view, but I would counter that just by saying that you know I'm not saying somebody sells out if they just decide to make content for the views and that's it. But it's close to it. It's close, right? And instead, making content that's authentic, making content that the content creator actually is passionate about, having some vulnerability, taking the time to prepare and do research before, making content, and then using that preparation to educate yourself and then hopefully teach the audience a thing or two as well. That might not be the most flashy or the most glamorous way to exist in our current social media culture, but that doesn't mean that it's not a path that's very rewarding to go down. And maybe we only get on our Card Ladder channel, like Card Ladder has 30,000 or so followers on Instagram. Our YouTube channel only has 3,000 subs, and we've been at it for a while. And that's because a lot of the content that we make and that we put out on that channel is just it's a bit in the weeds. It aspires to be scholarly. I wouldn't quite say that it reaches the level of scholarship per se, but we try. But I'll tell you this, to me, I find it quite satisfying and rewarding to know that maybe there's only a small pocket of people in the hobby who are genuinely interested in listening to that content, but I'm being true to myself and I'm making content that I really believe in and I think is important and valuable. And when I do hear from the pocketed audience that we have, those people feel the same way. And that's pretty rewarding.
I understand. But I've also talked to people who have said that a real investor or someone really involved in cars that are putting dollars, serious dollars, into cars would never listen to a content creator on YouTube on where to put their money. What do you think about that?
I think that's too strong. I think I do like a level of that. It makes me chuckle a bit, but I think that's a little. And honestly, like you could support that. You could say, look, you know, I'm a content creator who puts out content on YouTube. I am. Every week, my business partner, my best friend Josh and I, we put out a weekly podcast. You know, so I'm a content creator on YouTube as well. We don't tell people what to buy or what not to buy. We just talk about sort of the nature of collecting. We analyze markets, but I can see why somebody would say that because there's almost an inherent conflict of interest in the sense of being a content creator, pushing out content, and then seeing it as something like an investment advice. That's a little tricky, okay? But I think that's too strong because I love some of the content creators on YouTube. I think there's some really smart and insightful people on YouTube. And look, if we want to talk investing for a second, some of the best investment content, in my opinion, is content that talks about the history of the hobby, content that talks about things like pack odds, scarcity, things that talk about the statistical achievements of all-time great players, stuff that talks about all the different sort of nuances, getting into the weeds of different products and different sets, looking at data. People, that content gets tossed aside as, oh, this is boring, or this content is just for collectors. This isn't for the investor. But the irony of that is, this is a collectibles market, and the cards that are the most collectible, the cards that have the most appeal to those collectors who are always going to be here, who just love this hobby, those cards are built on some of the strongest markets that we have. And so in a roundabout way, cards that are the most collectible ultimately are also going to be some of the best investments.